Turkmenistan has had a couple pretty weird presidents over the years, and they've only had 3 of them. Saparmurat Niyazov was born in 1940 in Jipjak in the Soviet Union, but his father died in World War II and the rest of his family died in the 1948 Ashgabat earthquake, causing him to grow up in a Soviet orphanage before having to live with a distant relative. But he eventually went to study in Russia, receiving his diploma for electrical engineering, before having to go home after flunking out and getting expelled. But those who can't do enter politics, so Niyazov quickly rose through the ranks of the Communist Party, eventually becoming the first secretary of the Communist Party of the Turkmenistan SSR after the previous secretary got fired due to, of all things, a Khan-related scandal. In this position, Niyazov ruled with an iron fist, keeping Turkmenistan's Communist Party relatively hard-line when compared to the rest of the Soviet Union, which was undergoing a period of reform, with Niyazov supporting the 1991 hardline communist coup. But after the coup collapsed, the Soviet Union collapsed as well shortly thereafter, with Niyazov getting only 99.5% of the votes in the newly independent state of Turkmenistan's first presidential election, which might sound really good until you realize he was the only candidate that people could vote for. And in December of 1999, he got declared president for life. While Niyazov did claim he was planning to move the nation towards a functioning democracy with a market economy, he took little actual action towards this, and hopes for reform weren't helped by the whole, declaring himself president for life thing. But Niyazov did decide to reform Turkmenistan, just in some really peculiar ways. Less impactful changes he made to the country include banning lip-syncing during public concerts and broadcasts, banning dogs in the capital because he thought they smelled bad, banning opera and ballet, banning smoking in public, making the second Sunday of every August Melon Day, where dancing and music events happen all across the capital to celebrate the cultivation of a specific breed of melons, with him declaring the melons a, quote, gift of God with a glorious history, banning all news anchors from wearing makeup, with some alleging it was because he was having trouble telling which ones were men and which ones were women, banning car radios because he considered them, quote, useless, ordering that doctors swore an oath to him instead of the Hippocratic Oath, ordering the word for bread to be replaced by his mother's name, banning beards and long hair on men because he thought it made them look like Islamic extremists, paving a 22-mile trail in the mountains called the Walk of Health, which he forced his ministers to walk every year, and banning video games because he thought they were too violent for children. But he would make some more invasive changes, like firing doctors and gymnastics instructors to replace them with random conscripts from the army, ordering the closing of all hospitals outside the capital, firing over 15,000 people, stating, quote, if the people are ill, they can come to Ashgabat, which I assume is Turkmenistan's version of let them eat cake, banning the reporting of contagious diseases, closing the Academy of Science of Turkmenistan, shutting down all internet cafes, resulting in only 0.7% of the Turkmen people having access to the internet in 2005, compared to 68% in America, getting rid of the pensions for a third of the country's elderly population, and cutting the pensions of another 200,000 people, and ordering the Runama, a mix of his autobiography and a disputably accurate history book of Turkmenistan in the form of an epic poem, to be inserted into most parts of life, with it becoming mandatory to read it in schools, university, and government organizations, as well as it becoming the country's primary educational text, which coincided with a massive drop in education standards that wasn't helped by the fact that he partially dismantled the education system and closed all libraries outside the capital because he thought the average Turkmen didn't read, and that they only really needed to read the Quran and the Runama. And can I just say, he just did a bunch of wild stuff with this book, like making Runama studies a college degree, making it part of tests for both driving and government employment, renaming the months of the year after people and things from the Runama, including naming the month of September Runama, asking the book be recited regularly as a prayer, claiming that those who read the book 3 times would go to heaven, and sending the Runama into orbit in 2005 so it could, and I quote, conquer space. So it shouldn't be a surprise that under Niyazov's leadership, Turkmenistan became one of the greatest human rights violators in the world, with there being essentially no freedom of speech, lots of forced and child labor, and a boatload of political prisoners. One time when his motorcade was fired upon, it caused him to claim there was a coup attempt and to arrest thousands of suspects, with him purging several current and former members of the government. But his reign would come to an end after a sudden heart attack in 2005, with him naming no successor. According to the constitution, Oğuzgeldi Atayu, the head of Turkmenistan's parliament called the Assembly, would become president. But due to him harassing and humiliating his daughter-in-law into nearly committing suicide, he got arrested and sent to court, which eventually resulted in the case snowballing and him getting charged for human rights violations. So instead, elections were held in 2007, and Vice President Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedow won with 89% of the vote, getting sworn in shortly after. Gurbanguly quickly reversed many of his predecessors' more unorthodox policies and reformed the education and pension systems. But despite this, he still headed a highly repressive, authoritarian regime, and still had quite an absurd track record, with him winning the Ig Nobel Prize, a satirical award for, quote, using the COVID-19 viral pandemic to teach the world that politicians can have a more immediate effect on life and death than scientists and doctors can, due to his country's poor COVID response. He also made a giant golden statue of his favorite dog, is a DJ in his free time, and posted a rap video on YouTube where he raps about how great Turkmenistan is with his grandson.
Sport and the health is inspiration, makes body strong and strong all the nations, gives you a joy and raise spirit high. Sports is the way to your healthy life.
Acayip havada, nurana mekan, hadar tolkunları, coşkunu mukam, ak dolu uyar, gece vakan, öngedin öngü, can Turkmenistan, Turkmenistan, Turkmenistan.
Yeah, that's enough of that. Falling off his horse during a race causing heavy statewide censorship, with journalists having their devices checked for images or videos of the incident, having Jennifer Lopez sing him happy birthday, which resulted in her having to publicly apologize after she found out about all the, human rights violations, banning all black cars in the capital because he thought white was lucky, allegedly forcing the owners to pay out of pocket to have them repainted, and getting the highest possible award from the International Cycling Union due to his country's commitment to the sport. Also, he's a dentist, which compared to the other stuff, is just completely unforgivable. But in 2022, Gurbanguly suddenly stepped down to make way for his son Sedar, who won a snap election that's been deemed neither free nor fair, essentially starting a dynasty in Turkmenistan. Sedar Berdimuhamedow, who is technically still sharing power with his father, is the current president of Turkmenistan, and I guess he's relatively normal compared to the other guys, which is kind of like being the tallest midget, because he still heads a totalitarian dictatorship. But some wacky facts about him include the fact he's part of a couple breeding associations, and he has awards which include the Order of Friendship Award from Russia and the Meritorious Dog Breeder Award of Turkmenistan from, believe it or not, Turkmenistan.